Hey, I'm meteorologist Ian Kowalski, back with another episode of Weather Eye. When we're looking at the forecast here on the Western Slope, unfortunately, I don't really have any relief coming for us. It's ridiculous outside. You walk outside for about 10 seconds in the afternoon, and you walk into a pressure cooker, an open oven in the backyard. It's ridiculous. Hitting 100 degrees yesterday. Not a record, believe it or not. Today, we're recording on June 18th. Yesterday on the 17th, we got up to triple digits, but the record was 104. So we're close, but no cigar on that one. And now, personally, this is just one meteorologist's opinion. I would like to not break any temperature records over the next 7 days or so, but we're going to get consistently close to it, at least in my forecast, without actually getting there. We're going to dip down a little bit over the weekend. I'll be looking forward to that. Father's Day will be a little bit nicer in the mid-90s. It's not too much consolation, but an improvement nonetheless. And regardless, it's warm, it's dry on the Western Slope, and we are stuck in the middle of this drought. High pressure all across the western portion of the United States, with no real relief in sight for at least in the western portion of Colorado. Here in Junction, Delta, Montrose, we're really not seeing much improvement coming on the way. But in the grand scheme of things, at least we don't have active, severe weather like they're seeing all over the eastern portion of the United States, really without exception, all the way from the Midwest now down to the deep south. We're just seeing this massive system work its way through, bringing tornadoes up towards Illinois and Indiana, and then down further south now bringing historic, well, not quite historic, but at least massive flooding down towards Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. So very much different story than what we're seeing over here in the Intermountain portion of the U.S. So let's take a look at what we're looking at in the entire portion of the country right now here on our satellite radar. Remember, we're recording this on June the 18th. So what are we actually looking at here? The majority of our pattern across the United States is driven, believe it or not by the post-tropical remnants of Arthur, but up here, this low pressure system. I know it looks a little small just because of how the maps are, but remember, once you get towards the corners of the Earth, everything starts to get smaller a little bit. It's just kind of how maps are designed on a globe, but the scale does start to become a little bit less proportional to what you actually see. In fact, down towards the equator, this is really the most accurate look at what you can see in terms of scale on a map, and then the more and more you push up towards the north, it gets squished a little bit more. So that's why it looks a little bit tiny up here, but this is the really big one. Very deep, low pressure system. What's that mean? Well, deep, it's just the pressure is really low, and generally speaking, it starts to pull away a little bit more from the upper level stream in the atmosphere. That kind of drives its direction generally, and it will go all over the place. Kind of gets a mind of its own, really. Now, in this case, it's driving this huge air mass coming down from the north, bit of cooler air all across down from the Midwest and now down into the deep south. I've represented this here with a stationary front. What's a stationary front? Well, it's when cold air runs into warm air and then it stops moving. That's the simplest explanation for it, and I think it fits it pretty well. However, in this case, I do want to point out there's moisture on two sides of this right here. You'll see some clouds on the back end right here. You're going over towards Wichita, and then you're seeing down here, again, post-tropical cyclone Arthur right here. Now, what's that mean? Post-tropical means it just left the tropics. It's said goodbye to its vacation time, and unfortunately comes right here to the coast of the southern portion of the United States here in the deep south. And it has already just brought massive flooding, which we'll show you here in a moment. But to spend a little more time on this, you have this stationary front here as these two different air masses, the cold one and the warm one, run into each other. If they both have moisture, well, it's all getting pushed up into the air. And then that's how you get your storms, really. No different than any other front by itself. It's just two fronts running into each other effectively. And it's slowly making its way down towards the south as driven by this low up here. And then right here, this is your post-tropical cyclone. You may notice they're both represented by that L on screen right there. It's because effectively when you do see anything hurricane adjacent, those tropical storms, tropical cyclones, or a hurricane in of itself, it is operating on the same general mechanic of those anticyclonic, that means, not anticyclonic. I mixed up my words there. Okay, so cyclonic flow is counterclockwise. Anticyclonic flow is clockwise, and that's a high pressure system. This is cyclonic. This is a low pressure system. That's what it means. It's just counterclockwise. That's all it is. Oh, and now I have to think too, because I'm on your camera at home. I got to go the right way. So what's clockwise for me is counterclockwise for you. So there we go. A lot of thinking here on Weather Eye. I hope I get you to think every now and then, maybe to learn something about the weather. But again, we're looking at this right here. It's just unfortunately bringing just devastating flooding down to the southern portion of the United States. And on top of that, it's one of the reasons that you got those storms up here in the Midwest. Once we looked at yesterday on the 17th, you might have seen some reporting on that in the national news. Just big old storms coming on through. And why does that happen? Well, because of this flow right here, it's picking up. You see kind of these arrows representing the general wind direction right here. They're going up from the Gulf and right on here to the coast. So you know what that means? It's carrying all that moisture from the ocean on with it. And that's why you got some of this moisture making it all the way up here towards the Midwest, which when it ran into that front, of course, did cause some pretty strong storms. A lot of energy available. Again, energy, moisture, they really go hand in hand. They're tied to each other. And then at the same time, you had good shear mechanics, winds going different directions and different speeds. A couple other factors in there, too. You had another low coming on through. But now we are really going to focus right here as we go down towards Louisiana in particular, because we're heading west to east with this storm. It has, unfortunately, already seen some very just kind of upsetting damage to see. Really just seeing people's lives uprooted by some of this widespread flooding down towards Louisiana. We're going to take a look at Houma, Louisiana. It's a little bit west to the southwest of New Orleans itself. So it's right down here towards the very coast. I wonder if we can zoom in enough. We can actually get it to pop up. Here we go. This is Houma. We're going to be taking a look right here at some of the storm damage earlier on today that has already occurred. Let's take a look.
Yeah, multiple residents, as you can see behind me, had their roofs ripped off in this morning's severe weather with possible tornado-style damage. And one resident told me this is the worst damage he's seen on his street since Hurricane Ida. Toby Kimball says he's lived in Houma his whole life and on this street for more than 20 years. He says the power went out early Thursday morning after some lightning. Then just after 3, he says another alert came in.
When they sent the next alert, probably about 3:10 in the morning, there wasn't but a couple minutes after that's when it got real.
Campbell says the wind sounded like a train, the common sound of a tornado. His home avoided the worst damage, but his neighbor's roof ended up in his backyard.
I'm pretty fortunate compared to some of these other neighbors right here.
For some, the damage brought back memories of Hurricane Ida. Campbell says Ida tore his roof off and forced him to rebuild his house from the slab. Another resident says many people in the area are still trying to fully recover.
A lot of us are still rebuilding from Hurricane Ida, man. You know, a lot of us is still really rebuilding, putting stuff together, putting the pieces to the puzzle that happened 5 years ago, man, and we still haven't fully recovered, and now this happens.
By sunrise, neighbors were already outside helping each other clean up. Some picked up debris from yards. Others helped move debris to the side of the road with tractors.
About 7:30, 8 o'clock is, man, we've been out here just breaking stuff down, putting grub to the side of the road, man, and just sweating, living life, man, just rebuilding, man, coming together as a family, man.
People I spoke with say they are thankful no one on the street appears to be hurt, but they know the cleanup and repairs could take time.
No, I'm just thankful that, for the most part, everybody come unhurt. But a lot of, it's going to take a while to get a shake back from this.
Residents say they hope, since this was not a widespread damage event across the city of Houma, they hope insurance gets here quicker and they can get on with their repairs. Reporting in Houma, Griffin Broussard, Louisiana First News.
Yeah, so just a lot of harrowing footage there. And again, 5 years later, still recovering from Hurricane Ida, and then you just get this right after it. So we're hoping for the best for Louisiana right now. And these storms still are ongoing, too. The south is not out of this picture yet. So here's a look at our radar making its way a little bit past Mobile with some severe storms ongoing on our screen, heading its way on over into Georgia right now and kind of making its way over Atlanta at the same time. So before we move on to kind of what's doing right now, let's take a look at the rainfall over the past, we'll put 48 hours on there, past 2 days. Take a look down here and just look at that. I mean, some of the highest values you can really get on our scale here in the corner. Get these white zones here. We'll go to Houma within itself. Remember, these are estimations, but we will make its way on over here. Some of the heaviest rainfall you can see on our scale right here, it's in that pink zone. So we're getting around 9 inches of rain by these radar estimations. That is just an absurd amount of rain to get in such a short period of time over the past 2 days right here. So again, really just a harmful amount of flooding ongoing throughout the south. And now that same amount of rain is making its way down over towards, say, here, Picayune, and then over towards Wiggins. You're getting into Mississippi, and now over towards a little bit northeast of Mobile, getting some of those same values right here. So again, it's really just sweeping all across the deep south as you get these tropical remnants working their way, or post-tropical cyclone rather, working its way up across the deep south right now, and it's starting to make its way here into Georgia. So that's why you're not seeing anything with our rainfall totals right there. So unfortunately, we do expect a bit more of that snow ongoing in the next day or so. And when you look at our SPC outlook, no surprise there to see it reflected right here across the country. Most of those slight risk zones. And again, I'll say it once, I'll say it again. Slight risk does mean a lot more than just a slight risk of damage. It's just proportionally over, tens of hundreds of miles. It does technically calculate out to slight. But still, these yellow zones here, that's where you're getting all of that rainfall here. And then a little bit over when you look at Dallas, we kind of saw that other little blob of some clouds when you were looking at our radar earlier on. It's a little bit reflective of the system coming in over from the west, getting a little bit more energy built up over there. So all the East Coast is really expecting some of this widespread rainfall as we go into the next 24 hours or so. Again, the Storm Protection Center always hand makes these maps when you look all across the eastern portion of the United States. So you're not really getting any exception to that as we move to the next couple of days here. And look at our tornado outlook too, because one of the main things we're thinking about is not necessarily just the actual active impact of that rainfall, but then you're also looking at some tornado potential, particularly down towards Alabama. When you look at the Storm Protection Center's general outlooks that they've given, and you can see it right here, just in that 5% zone right there. But there really could be some popped up when you look towards this eastern area of Alabama right here. Now, why is that? There's a good amount of, say, buoyancy with those particles. That's one of the main reasons that was given. Again, all that means is all that moisture is going on up into the air. And the more freely it rises, the higher energy you get storms, and the more destructive, unfortunately, that they typically become. So that's what you're looking at right there. There's your explanation for that. Of course, wind is something you're thinking about, too, in that 10% zone, getting to that potentially 60-mile-per-hour gust territory. Generally is what you see with that 15% range, but it can go higher at times. It's a very kind of widespread chart. But hail is not really on the table for this, just because, of course, you don't necessarily see the clouds getting that high necessarily in a system like that, and you really do need them to be stacked up into the atmosphere to get a lot of hail in there. That's one of the reasons that you get hail, is just because the cloud, or rather, one of the primary reasons that you do get hail, because you need those clouds to start to stack up a little bit more into the air so that water can actually freeze. So that's a really big contributing factor. And of course, the number one reason you can't have without it is you need it to actually be cold to get ice, in case you didn't know. So that is another reason that you are going to see that ongoing over the next couple of days here. So you're really not seeing any big changes, unfortunately, for the south over the next day or so. Just seeing more rounds of that rainfall making its way on over towards the east. It's just that primary driver of our systems all across the country. And well, we really wish, again, that we could see a little bit more of that. And especially when you look at places down south that needs this rainfall. I mean, say take a look at a drought monitor, right? Now, usually you'd say, oh, okay, the rain's good. But it's really no different than here what you would see on the western slope where, yeah, we want that rain, but we want it to be gradual. We want it to not be too intense, because when you say, get to a place like southeastern Alabama, it's in this moderate drought right here, or say the dry to drought areas here in the central portion of Georgia, those areas are going to have a lot more trouble absorbing that water. And even down here, I mean, surely it kind of scales a little bit. Obviously, when you go down to New Orleans, you go down to Houma, there's, even if it's gotten less rain overall than it would expect, the moisture still, generally speaking, is a bit moisture here. But these places which have had that fire weather, say the southeastern portion of Georgia, they really just can't take that rainfall in the same way that another place could, that when you're not in that drought, because you do have just that drier soil. Drier soil is not going to absorb all that precipitation at the same rate. So again, that's why drought is so devastating. As we know here on the western slope, it just sets up for more problems down the line. And so that's why, again, you just more factors stacking on top of each other for why this really just is a very bad setup for what we do expect for this event right here. So we'll take one look one more time, just kind of at these maps right here. I wanted to show you not just the drought specifically, but I also wanted to look at kind of the more severe weather potential of this. Again, we don't think hail is going to be a big part of this, but I did want to show you the shear right here. Now, why is this an important factor? Well, generally speaking, if you're getting a lot of shear, you could, of course, like we talked about tornadoes right here. We'll say go on over here towards Ozark right here. Sorry, I moved the screen a little bit too far. And we're also going to turn on our watches and warnings to see what is being monitored right now by the National Weather Service. Okay, we'll take a look at our chart here. You see that red zone built into the green. That's what you were looking at when you're seeing, okay, there's some spin, there's some rotation there, at least on some level. It doesn't necessarily mean tornado in and of itself. Again, this couplet doesn't look particularly tight. It's a little bit messy. You can see right there. It's not a tight little circle. That's what you'd be looking for, say, a tornado. But this is a bit more widespread. Could lead to something down the line. But that would generally just be an area of at least where you're going to see some stronger winds typically. And then we're all in this red zone right here. What's that? It's your tornado watch. It aligns just with what we were looking at right here. You do see that rotation spinning up. So let's take a look up here too. You do have these tornado warnings being issued over towards the northeast. I think our radars, locally at least, is having a little bit of trouble catching up with looking at where this is going on over towards the east. Sometimes radars do go down. Sometimes they're at the wrong angle. Say when it goes right over a radar, it does become typically a bit more hard to track. So just looking at that right here, can't really give you a good visual of that, unfortunately. But just kind of another addition to the forecast as you look over the eastern portion of the United States. And then when you look at shear rate necessary, it's going to show you about the same thing. Shear rate versus the shear swath mosaic. Those are the names for them. But I mean, for your purposes, there's not too much of a difference unless you are, of course, a meteorologist like me. In which case, you need to look at both of them because it's the difference in the shear, the rate at which the shear occurs versus the actual just base value for it. So that is your good look here across the United States, kind of just taking a look at the severe weather on over towards the east. We are going to take one more look because I did mention earlier on in the show that we did have a lot of storms yesterday on the 17th over towards the Midwest overnight into tonight, where you still see, of course, as flood watches and flood warnings already being issued all across Kentucky, really, a place that, again, really just hard to take that flooding because you see all that rain just go down into the valleys. No different than what you'll sometimes see here in Colorado. We're going to take a look towards Indiana, actually. We're going to look at Monroe State Park, where there was a lot of storm damage earlier on today, just kind of give you a visual of what some potentially, they haven't confirmed it yet, but what post-tornado damage can look like. And then we're going to go to a break, and we'll be right back talking local weather here on the western slope. But I'll tell you right now, it's going to be warm and dry. I'll be back here in a moment.
Absolute destruction here in the northern part of Morgan-Monroe State Forest. Look at this tree behind me. I'm only 5'3" here. I'm kind of standing down a little bit, but just see how this tree is completely mangled, completely destroyed here. Now, this was likely in the road, and they had heavy machinery coming by, ripping the trees out of the road and putting them to the side. So this is likely more damage from that machinery moving it out of the way, but you can just see how destroyed all of these trees here. 24 hours ago, this was a completely tree canopy covered area. Now you see blue sky and a clearing, and it really is the destruction here. You can just see it. People are driving by in absolute awe of the destruction that happened here, most likely from a tornado that hit here in northern Monroe County. We do know there are about 20 primitive campsites here in the park. We're told that's about 4 miles south of where we are. Anybody who was camping there, we're told, is accounted for and safe, which is the good news. There are homes just a few miles north and south of where we are right now, and it's a silver lining blessing that this struck in a more remote area. And to our knowledge, from where we are right here, there are no injuries or homes destroyed. We saw some homes that were intact just up Old State Road 37, which is now clear. Crews were out since midnight. They're still working. We can hear them. They're further down this road here. So that is an indicator that this tree damage continues as you go further south into the State Forest Park here. And they're just working to clear more of this roadway and just to figure out how extensive this is. We're told it's about a mile stretch here of this destruction and of these old trees that are destroyed. One thing that my photographer and I, or BJ here, were commenting on earlier, the smell. You can smell the fresh wood, the pine, and you can just smell the trees that have been just destroyed here. So it's a very interesting thing to wake up and see the destruction. Thankfully, nobody hurt here. We'll send it back to you guys.
All right, we're back from the break. We did see, unfortunately, a lot of destruction from storms over towards the east. But now when we look back in the west, there's a whole lot of nothing. I mean, even on our satellite and radar, for right now when I'm recording, kind of give you a good visual of it. There's really just not much to see. We see this big dome of moisture over towards our east, building up down towards New Mexico. It's not making it really north of the San Juans, unfortunately. And then a little bit over here, we go up towards Portland, you go over towards Oregon, but really this portion of the west right here, right in the middle that I'm zooming in on. Whole lot of nothing ongoing. And that's because it's where all that high pressure is trapped. It's where all the heat is, and it's where we are too. So when you look at our upcoming forecast, unfortunately, we really just don't have that much change coming up across the entirety of our portion of the United States. It's going to be dry. It's going to be hot. And some winds are going to come and go based on a little ripple here in the atmosphere. But that's really it in terms of change. We got a fire weather watch right here issued for the Western Slope on Saturday. It is 2 days from now, so on the 20th, day before Father's Day. Do keep that in mind. Could see some windier days. National Weather Service could see gusts up to 45 miles per hour is their estimation. But you know, it's a little bit of a darker tan zone too. What is that? That is an air quality watch issued for a I have to always remember the name, a stratospheric intrusion. What does that mean? It's a crazy little thing, but more or less it just means there's too much ozone here on the surface. Too much ozone is getting pulled down from the upper atmosphere. And basically, to give you a visual of it, here we go. I got this piece of paper right here. This is a perfect visual. You're going to have up here, us, here in the troposphere, down on the bottom. And above that, it's going to be everything else above us in the stratosphere. And basically what happens is it just folds. That little boundary layer between the two, the tropopause, that's what our paper represents. It just folds, gets that little pocket of ozone in there. And then when you see either a low pressure system or a big disturbance kind of roll on through, it just pulls that on down to us here at the surface. And ozone is no different than any other pollutant. It just makes the air a little bit harder to breathe. So that's unfortunately really the only main event with our local weather coming up here soon. So when you do think about us, of course, you're thinking drought this time of year. Temperatures are not going to be helping us out too much. Wind gusts, again, are not really going to jump up until you get to Saturday. You know, they're pretty manageable on Friday, 20 miles per hour at most. And then you see those temperatures going to start to go down a little bit as you go into the night, but still in the 60s and jumping up into even the upper 90s by the time you get to Friday later on in the day. Maybe a sprinkle here and there over towards Utah in the very northwestern corner of the state, but no real big changes there, unfortunately. It's just really going to be dry for us as we move throughout the weekend. See a little bit up towards our north. We're not even really looking at rainfall with that. The biggest worry is actually just dry lightning, really. No big changes coming on the Western Slope, just not enough moisture. Too dry, too hot for us to get any real significant measurable rainfall outside of an isolated dot or two that you're seeing popping up. It's really not going to mean anything for the valleys. It's all going to come down as virga anyway as we move in the next couple of days. So let's take a look right here at our very own reporting here at the station, where we're going to talk a little bit more about what local officials are doing to counter this drought and the lack of rain I just visualized for you. And then we'll come right back here and we'll wrap up the show.
You don't have to look at the Grand Mesa and the Colorado River to see how bad the water levels here on the Western Slope are. But what does that mean for our state parks? Well, Colorado Parks and Wildlife say
there are potential impacts to motorized boating, maybe fishing, even in some cases where we tend to see some of those algae blooms, we may see them, sooner.
Gonzalez tells me the warmer water and lower water levels may cause earlier algae blooms in some reservoirs like James M. Robb. Highline Lake may see more visitors as it stays full for recreation. And staffing remains a concern, so visitors should be patient and check park social media and websites.
Because if we start to see situations where we're removing docks from the water, that is going to restrict or limit the use of motorized boats.
This can cause a bigger issue when it comes to safety.
then comes with its own risks because if we need to take one of our boats off that we utilize for rescue, that can create a delay in getting out to you.
CPW emphasizes the importance of monitoring water temperature when fishing, especially as the water warms up in the summer. Now, anglers should carry a thermometer and consider fishing earlier in the day, or at higher elevations where the water is cooler to reduce stress on the fish. It is also advised to have a backup location if a fishing spot is crowded, and importantly, a quick return of caught fish to water is crucial for their survival.
And right now, we're not looking at any fishing closures, voluntary fishing closures.
Kyle Kawamoto, KREX News.
Yep, so make sure you know your local fishing regulation as you move into, the rest of the summer. Summer's starting very soon, on the 21st. A little bit ahead of us at the time of recording, but by the time you're watching it, it might be summer already. Let's take a look at our regional futurecast here. Again, you're not really seeing too much, but we talked about those clouds, a little bit of moisture down towards New Mexico. I wish it would have a little bit up here, but you're not really seeing much until you get to the Front Range. A little bit south of Pueblo, too, it's going to be possible, but just western slope, unless you're in the very northwestern corner of the state, which, statistically speaking, not a lot of people are. There's just nothing going on, man. You see that big old storm come over, heading on towards the east and Panhandle in Texas and over towards Kansas. It's just all going to be missing us. All this moisture, it's just trapped towards the eastern side of the Rockies. We're getting none of it. Really not much to look at there. When you look at our national futurecast too, it's going to be more of the same. Unfortunately, more rounds of severe weather when you look over towards the Western Plains region, down towards Oklahoma and Texas, and then it does just build down and move into the deep south. So that's really the biggest change we're seeing, is just more rain over towards the east and a whole lot less for us over in the Intermountain West. You see that big storm system going, almost looks like kind of a bit of a QLCS they're expecting there. That's a quasi-linear convective system. There's your vocab word for the day. It just means a big old line of storms, effectively. And it's heading on over towards the east, and we see those flood watches and warnings we talked about in Kentucky earlier on. So that has been our show of Weather Eye for the week. If you have any questions for me, please send me an email. I'd be happy to explain any meteorological concepts on the show, or maybe you have a picture of some of these beautiful blue skies here in the Western Slope. I can show those to you, or rather feature them here on the show. You will be showing the picture to me, and then I will be showing them to everyone else who is watching there. That's a good way of explaining it. So thank you for watching this week's episode of Weather Eye. I have been meteorologist Ian Kowalski, and I'll see you again next week.